Hi, welcome back to Power Insights. I'm your host, Mark Bruce. Today, we are at the 2019 Gulf Coast Power Association Fall Conference, and we're speaking with Michelle Gregg, Executive Director of the Texas Competitive Power Advocates. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you. So, you made an appearance last week at the PUCT workshop discussing summer 2019 results from the ERCOT market. Let's start there. At a high level, what do we take away from the performance of the market this summer?
The market worked exactly as it was designed to. We saw scarcity, and at those times we saw high prices, and that's exactly how this market was intended to work. We saw some price responsive demand response, and our generators were there, and they ran hard and long through the summer, and we made it.
It was a tight summer, and we knew that going in. I think some folks thought maybe there was some political risk that if the market didn't perform, then the government would step in and say, well, maybe we need to do something different. But as you said, I think the consensus of the stakeholders is that the market did perform. So are we on a course for more of the same, or are we going to have an ongoing discussion about tweaking the market design still further?
I think that from our perspective, we've had a lot of discussions about that, and I expect that we will implement what the commission has decided to this date with, the next shift in the LOLP, and of course real-time co-optimization. And we need to watch the market and see what happens. Regulatory certainty is an important thing for investors. And staying the course, while I think we're moving in the right direction, I'm not ready to say, we're where we need to be. I think we need to watch what happens over the next summer and maybe a couple of summers from now, and we'll have a better idea with some real experience and data and know whether we need to make tweaks or not. But at this point, I think we continue on as we are.
The Independent Market Monitor made a presentation at that commission workshop and also a few days prior at the ERCOT Board of Directors. And Ms. Garza seemed to suggest that this shift in the LOLP did in fact feed the price adders a little bit more as it was intended to do. And it seemed like for the first time really since the adoption of the ORDC, we actually got some meaningful contribution to price formation out of those adders. Do your members feel like that was a positive market design step? Do they feel like the coming further shift of the LOLP curve is continuing that? And is there more that needs to be done to support that scarcity price formation?
So our members had advocated for a one standard deviation shift in the LOLP, and the commission adopted a quarter this year and a quarter next year. So what we saw this summer was definitely a step in the right direction. We think that the next quarter shift is an important step in that correct direction. And whether anything else needs to be done, I think we're not ready to say, we're good where we are, or yes, we need to make another change. I think we need to see the full implementation and how that impacts pricing before we can make that decision.
Okay. What about prior to that, back in, I think, Project 47199, shifting the LLP was one of the ideas on the table. Inclusion of marginal losses was another idea on the table. There were a handful of ideas there, not all of which made through. The commission decided, let's do real-time co-optimization. Let's do the LLP shift to encourage scarcity price formation. Are any of your members advocating picking up some of those other ideas that got left behind, or are they staying left behind for now?
For now, they're staying left behind.
Okay.
Yeah. And we had members on both sides of those issues, and so candidly the association didn't take a position one way or another on, for example, marginal losses, but at this point I think our members are focused on getting the right decisions on real-time co-optimization and having efficient implementation of that, and then watching what happens with the next shift in the ORDC.
And of course, implementation of real-time co-optimization is still quite some time away. We have a target date as we stand here today of June of 2024. The next standard deviation shift, the quarter point in the LLP, will happen for next summer. There really aren't any other major market design changes on the board between here and there, other than the adoption of NPRR 863, which modifies the ancillary services suite a bit. I think a lot of people are looking to members of your group wondering, is that where the new build is going to come from? Are we going to get some new gas-fired generation on the system? Or are we living in a world where it's going to be more and more intermittent renewables and more demand response? Do you have a view on that, on what to expect under the market design we have?
I mean, under the market design right now, and until we see a more sustained, higher scarcity price, I don't think you're going to see new gas plants being announced. Those are long-term investments, and right now, earning cost of new entry isn't enough to give investors the signal that they need, that they're going to earn a reasonable return over the life of the plant. I think you saw uprates from existing plants that were helpful in getting through the summer. We have one member that put an energy storage facility out in December. So I think you're going to see more of that. We've had announcements of some solar and some gas megawatts, but not in the neighborhood of hundreds. And so as long as we have tax credits that are providing an incentive for more renewable build, I think that's what you're going to see on the system. I do think that more price responsive demand response is coming, but again, the insight into where that is and how much isn't there, and it makes it difficult in terms of planning for summer.
It does. That was an interesting thread of discussion, I think, that came out of the commission workshop. If I recall, Katie Coleman, the TIEC's representative at the table, suggested that in the future, more and more of resource adequacy is going to have to be supplied by this elasticity in the demand side of the equation. Is that a concern for your members because it eats away at generation market share? Or do they view that as a positive because it's all part of a well-functioning market?
I think it depends on what type of price responsive curtailment we're talking about. So, for example, right now we have industrial customers that curtail load based on 4CP. That is typically an action that's taken not based on what's happening in terms of reliability on the grid or in terms of scarcity pricing. It is, an action that is taken to reduce their transmission costs and shift that cost onto other classes of consumer. So from that standpoint, it very much impacts the load that we have on 4CP and near 4CP days, but we consider that an out-of-market action because it isn't tied to what's actually going on in the market at that particular point. And it does have a negative impact on price. So, I mean, that's something that we look at similarly to ERS and think that that's something that should be considered in terms of having some type of price response for it.
Yeah, that was actually another one of the ideas that was laid out in the paper by William Hogan and Susan Pope, right?
It was.
The idea that maybe that 4CP transmission cost allocation methodology should be revisited. There definitely seemed to be some pushback to opening that up in some quarters. Is that an idea that your members still think should be on the table, or have we kind of gone through that and we need to focus on other things?
I don't think we've gone through it. I don't think we've revisited what the underlying assumptions were when 4CP was put into place and whether that's still the right answer. And I think that needs to be reviewed. Both from our transmission planning perspective as well as cost allocation and the impact on the market.
You mentioned one of your members making an investment in energy storage. There is a major effort beginning now at ERCOT, what I tend to think of as sort of the second generation of energy storage rules. What's y'all's take on that? Is that time well spent on ERCOT's part? Is that necessary market infrastructure activity? And does storage really have a role to play in the ERCOT market?
I think we don't know yet what role it will play. I think that the development of it and what's in the interconnection queue indicates that it's something that's definitely coming, and we should be ready for it. I think it is time well spent, and our members are ready to work on that at ERCOT.
Okay. Well, now that summer 2019 is behind us, already inevitably some people are looking forward to summer 2020.
Yes.
And some even to summer 2021 and 2022. There's a sense that maybe the days of big fat planning margins aren't coming back. That we are, in fact, in a new world. Is that your sense as well? Is this where we're going to be for a while?
I think this is where we're going to be for a while. I think this may be our new normal. I think the fact that we have lower reserve margins is what this market is designed to deal with. I think we will end up at a point where we will eventually have new build, and then of course prices will decline again. That's the ebb and flow of an energy-only market. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. This is where we are. I think our summer this year and our summer last year indicate that we may not have a typical summer in Texas anymore. Last year we had summer that started essentially in May. And this year we had summer that really didn't start until August and went, into the beginning of October.
Into October, right.
I think what we've learned is that we need to be prepared for the full gamut.
Interesting. Well, thank you for coming by today. We've enjoyed
Thank
the
you.
time.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.